Welcome everyone to a very special live episode here on InfoSec Live of the CISO Experience, where we get to give you, our audience, can't get my words out, the chance to learn from and interact with our industry's leadership. My name's Stumbling Simon Lindstead this morning, and I'm the founder of the InfoSec Live community and also your host for this show. But before we bring today's guest on, sharing stories and best practice over the last few months has led to nearly 50,000 views and 8,000 hours of our content being watched on YouTube by you, our amazing subscribers. So a huge thank you for your engagement. And if you'd like to go a step further and support the wider InfoSec Live community, or indeed buy me a cheeky decaf coffee, we do have a few ways you can show your appreciation. First up, the ability to purchase super stickers in the chat if you'd like your question bumped up to the top, and 3 tiers of membership allowing you to show your support in any way that you can. But whether you join or not, being here and engaging with our content is what really matters. So if you're watching this live, please do like and subscribe. We want to make these interactive, so make sure you also drop any questions you may have in the chat. After all, it is you, our audience, who make these events so special. So now, time for the show. I'm very excited and honoured to be joined today by Professor Cameron Buck-Rogers, who, following a 15-year career in the Royal Navy, held several senior leadership roles at the Ministry of Defence. After that, he joined the Bank of England, where he was Chief Information Security Officer and latterly Chief Security Officer. We'll dig more into his background and what he's doing now shortly, followed by a focus on what if cyber was a smell, what would it be, and how NASA's mission control principles are relevant to cyber now. So let's bring him on. Good morning.
Hello, mate.
How are you?
Good. See that wardrobe change.
Love it. Yeah. And with the background, I didn't even see it happen. It was seamless while we were doing the countdown then. Look, Buck, thanks ever so much for taking the time to come on and have a chat today. Before we dig in, just a quick thank you to the lots and lots of people we've got in the audience watching this. You've got a few fans in there, I think. Lots of community members. Graham Duckworth, one of your colleagues from Cyberscale.
Yeah.
We've got Terry Michelle Hughes. Mr. Chapman's in the house as well from Cyberscale. Precious, Richard Phillips, Salunio, and many, many more. And apologies if I haven't mentioned any of you. But Buck, I've given a little bit of background on where you've come from, but would you mind starting off by giving us a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose so if we go right back, I mean, leaving school at 16, no qualifications, joined the Royal Navy. You know, I went to school in Norfolk, and I think it was only when I was in my 40s I found out I was dyslexic, and that was, I think, mainly driven by a good boss at the Bank of England. Then I remember the day I left the Navy sort of crying, thinking, what have I done? Because you join at such a young age and it becomes sort of your personality almost. Went to BT, and then within BT, I did a couple of external roles. I probably was the worst ever BT van driver. I also remember going
that's a claim to fame in itself, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I also remember going into I think it was Christmas Eve. I'm careful what I say, but Christmas Eve, I'm up a telegraph pole in South London. And I heard this tapping. I look across the road, and there's a man, shall we say, self-pleasing as he looks at me as I'm trying to fit a telephone line. And I suddenly thought, I can't keep doing this. So I went, got a university course, got promoted, joined government. Then when I left government, went to HSBC first time round as head of cyber threat intelligence, where I met Sandra and some of the other people on here. And then Bank of England as their cyber expert first, then deputy CISO, and then CSO, which then led me again to HSBC as their global head of resilience. COVID came 18 months later. Then joined BAE as head of cyber for air. And then since 3 weeks, I've now been Mr. Independent. But running parallel to that, you know, I've now set up my own company. You can see the logo in the background. I've got a little thing about crows, helping Cyberscale, and I've just come back from Gambia where I've done some stuff for the IMF, and then I got my professorship.
How exciting! Can we take a step back, because you did something else while you were at the Bank of England, which may affect a lot of penetration testers out there.
CBEST.
Yeah, do you want to talk about that and how that came about?
The problem is, so if I go back, penetration testing ended up being like a really crap one-night stand. So you engage with it and you buy it because you're full of excitement of what could happen. You wake up the following day with a scratch and full of remorse. So I was determined to, what could we do? Push to the top. So could we increase the UK's penetration testing community? could we improve the standard of skills, and actually could we move away from that one night stand type stuff and get people to feel like they've got something worthwhile, actually relevant. Because I think there's too many, it's too geeky, some of this stuff. And I always remember we did one thing, and there was a test. There was a picture of a cake on someone's desk, and then the penetration tester blew it up, and you could see what operating system on and stuff like that. There was more comments that when I was briefing senior leadership, going with pictures and diagrams than any technical stuff, because they thought, but we don't like photos in the organisation. Yeah, but someone has, and they've taken a picture of that, and they've had a birthday celebration which they put on Facebook, and suddenly thought there's got to be a better way that we can talk about risk, we can talk about cyber that people get without, making it too geeky. And then how do you join up all the holes? So how do you make it realistic so you can go, well, actually in real life, this is how it happened and what it looked like. So that was the foundation of CBEST, and then it spun out to GBEST, TBEST, and then Europe took it for TIBA and things like that. So
for those that don't know what CBEST is, I take it, again, my lack of technical knowledge in the industry is about this big, but it is to do with regulated banking and investment sector.
It's not stress testing, one would say. It's threat-led penetration testing. So the original version of red team, aren't purple teaming, penetration testing based on real threat scenarios for critical financial institutions, looking at how you would look at their critical systems and processes that would affect financial stability.
Okay, understand. And you've also, I believe you're just back from a trip helping the IMF as well.
Yeah, Gambit, I said to you, so for the missed it, mistake 101, I've travelled a bit, packing the suitcase on Friday, chatting to my friend, from my knee up to my short line is bright red with sunburn, and I go on holiday soon. So
I've got pictures of you in your swimming trunks around by the pool now, but
well, I was with somebody who was lovely. I gave a shout out, and I was like, Thomas, I know you're Hungarian. If his budgie smugglers come out, I've got nothing to do with you. Because it's not happening. And then the other thing, which I didn't realise, was, I'm not sure it's relevant to this, was
it's all relevant, Buck.
Okay, well, there was a lovely beach outside the hotel, and it was reasonably had litter on it. But I like running, I like my fitness. So walk on the beach first night, and there's all these young lads running, training, doing exercise, doing circuits. And I thought, Gambia must be obsessed with fitness. Brilliant. I can't wait I'm going to join him. I'll go for a run with them, until the hotel owner said that's because there's a massive female sex trade there, and they're trying to keep their bodies six-pack ready for the tourists. Needless to say, didn't work for me.
I didn't know.
No, mate. No.
That's not where the sunburn came from. Then.
No, it's not. No.
Let's just clear that up before we move on. Yeah. So you've had an illustrious career. What's it like working for yourself now? I suppose
it's scary. I spoke to Kate today, and I said, "Oh, how do I do this? I do that." She's like, "I promise you, it'll become easy," but it is, because institutionalized. So in some respects, I've rallied against the institution, but I've been part of it. And I think at times I tend to have a chip on my shoulder about that, where perhaps education, perhaps background. I was one of five. We didn't have a lot, and I think you're surrounded. I think if people go to public schools and private schools, they have a sense of confidence, which I wish I could have.
Yeah, do you know what? It's funny you should say that. I mean, I was lucky enough to be privately educated from, I went to primary school at St Christopher's in Old Catton in Norwich, which is now apartments, I think. But then I was at Norwich School, which is a private school, until my parents split up when I was 13, and I ended up at the local comprehensive. But I think all of my confidence and ability to speak publicly came from having that drilled into me on a daily basis.
Yeah, I do. And I think that's what the place I'll get to. I'm very lucky because like Darren and Graham, a lot of people on here have been really supportive, saying, do this, do that. I've got a good accountant, but it is just that suddenly the structure is your own structure. You can do as little or as much you want to do.
Yeah.
And then what do you charge for? What do you give away for free, and what do you charge for?
I think that's the tricky bit. I mean, for most people setting up their own businesses, there's an element of having to give away and add some value first before you charge. But I would argue, with your extensive background and what you bring to the table, your fees should be reassuringly high, Buck.
Thanks, mate.
Let's talk about, you said you're doing some work with Cyberscale. What are you doing with those guys? Because they're a local firm to me as well.
Yeah. So we formally start on the 1st of April. So I'll be part of Darren's advisory panel, looking at how we can grow the business, how we can support. I think one of the key things which I'm keen to work jointly with him is mentoring. Because probably, so if you look at what average tenure of a CISO, 18 months, 3 years max. And then
I think it went up a bit in the pandemic because people couldn't move, but it's starting to equalize back down again. Yeah.
Why aren't we coaching and growing the next future of cybernauts to come through, rather than I'll go to market and get somebody that's just on a treadmill? Because there's no, if we want to be seen as a profession, there's no fresh blood coming through, and it's the same faces with the same comments. We've got the same relationships. We should, if we can help grow the next batch, we can mentor them, buddy up with them. A bit of forward leadership, a bit forward thinking. So I'm working with Darren on that, and then they've just launched their day assessments for small to medium enterprises.
Yeah, I love that.
It's really interesting because so I live in Sutton in Surrey. I was at Sutton United's football ground yesterday, League Two club, and they had like a business engagement meeting, and I was chatting to somebody there. And then it's amazing how the SMEs know they've got to do something, but they don't know what to do, because I think they're paralysed by an overwhelming amount of information or cost.
Yeah. I think that's very, very true, especially with the smaller business side. I mean, that relates back to pen test as well, doesn't it? So the issues I've seen since my short stint in the industry is, one, businesses think it's a penetration test that they need to become cyber secure, which it clearly isn't. There's a lot more to it than that. And the other biggest driver I've seen in the last couple of years, there's a saying, isn't there? If you keep doing the same thing over and over again, expect different results. It's the definition of insanity. If you look at the industry and how much we've spent on cyber tools and products over the last few years, and then look at whether breaches and attacks have reduced down or not, we're clearly not doing something right. So what's your thoughts behind that, and what can we do different as an industry?
Because we rely on, it's interesting that, and I've, having done some work in Africa and stuff like that, it's just, and I think you put it on your LinkedIn about tech. Someone will sell you something, and then you have to buy something else to go on top of it. So there was one organisation where they had, they bought a banking platform, like a bank in a box, deployed it, and then they said, oh, that won't work yet because you've got to buy a mod to go on top of that. And that's the problem. It's got to be the human factor. I think if CISOs want to survive as CISOs, it's got less about the tech. It's got to be more to do with understanding risk, being able to articulate upwards to the boards the risks they're facing, and the culture that you endear. And it has to be culture and awareness first. Because like you said, you look at the breaches are going up, this is going up, people are spending more. It's got to be the human factor. This is not a technical problem, it's a people problem.
Is it people and processes, perhaps?
Yeah, process and policy. And I think you get those right, whatever organisation, you can scale it, then you're in a good place. And, being approachable.
I think, and understandable with the reduction of too much jargon that we all seem to spout in this industry. We've got a couple of questions. Let me bring them up. I'll just move you up to the top so you don't get cut off. Here we go. So this one, which I think was from Rupert Davey, who came to our Cambridge event, who you met a few weeks ago. To what extent does annual pen testing lull businesses into a false sense of security? Some of the ones I've seen, there wouldn't be any false sense of security.
You don't get any security at all. I think they do. This is like an MOT, isn't it? It's a snapshot. Yeah. And that's where CBEST added a benefit, was the fact there was a big human bit to it, where it wasn't just about testing the technology, it was testing your response capability, it was testing your policies and your processes. Because otherwise, it's a indication of health. It's not necessarily guaranteed pass. And I think it's an MOT, isn't it?
Yeah.
And there's other controls you need outside doing annual pen test, going, well, I'm done now, I'll move on.
I think the thing I see from a layman's perspective is there's an awful lot of patching and trying to solve the issues that are at the end, but no one's really addressing what's causing these issues at the other end. And that goes back to what you've said about policy and people, doesn't it? Yeah,
I do. I mean, I'm actually appropriate. There's some of those stats you get is about useful as a fish with tits.
Yeah.
Because you've got because you have, I would patching this or patching that, but there's other controls you can have. And stuff like that, and it's just so frustrating. As an industry, we're still using language we've been using 20 years.
Yeah.
We want to be seen as professionals. We want to be seen as engaging with the business, and because, like you said, is we're also in a position, if we're not careful, where we're defending a position, never improving it, because the way we articulate stuff.
Yeah. Do you think there's I mean, I relate this to financial services where people who know an awful lot about the financial markets are very good at making it sound very complicated and making them sound very important. Do you think there's an element of that within leadership in this industry as well?
It's a bit of showboating, isn't there?
Yeah.
I think there's different words for that, but I think it's a bit of showboating where people just open their mouth and words fall out.
Yeah, I do that all the time.
But you know what I mean? And it is, and it's, oh, we've got this, that, and you say, no, hang a minute, can you put it on a page on a diagram for me? And if you can't, then we've got it wrong. If you
Yeah.
can't articulate it on one page or one slide, then you got it wrong, haven't you?
This is the best comment. Fish with tits. That's in my top 10 takeaways from this session.
Thanks for that.
Love that. We've got another one. Carlos, who I'll be seeing not tomorrow, day after. I look forward to it, Carlos. What's the percentage of scanning versus manual effort that should be leveraged for a quality test bracket indication of health?
I would lean towards manual effort in some. I'd lean towards you do the scanning because that's the right thing to do. So that's 20-30% your effort, and then the manual effort should be interpreted and making it relevant. Because we can scan and go, there's a vulnerability here, vulnerability there, but actually, what are the mitigating controls have you got?
Yeah.
And how can you then look at the policies and processes to support that? And look, do you know what's critical? Do you know what your crown jewels are? Where is it, and what can you do to protect it? Yeah, I remember when in the previous role where we said for the top 20, we'll do everything we can. Outside of that, it'll be best efforts, because work on assumption is not if, it's when. So you put your controls and stuff accordingly.
That makes absolute sense. Let's move on to two of the other topics we're going to talk about today. First one, let's go with the smell of cyber. I don't know if you saw the response on my post I did this morning. Someone said they think it would smell a little bit like an electrical connection that's gone wrong. So a little bit burnt, a little bit fishy, and a little bit melted was the first comment I got. What do you think it would smell like?
I think I put on there something like, part of me thought, if you look at the kill chain, you can walk down the kill chains and measure it against maturity. So, I think our response and detection most probably would smell like a nervous teenager on a first date. So Lynx deodorant most probably.
With big sweat patches.
Yeah, big sweat patches underneath it. Yeah, Lynx. A tip there, that's why actually I can recommend women's deodorant, because they don't, it's got no white marks on dresses.
Yeah, I'm actually wearing my wife's roll-on Dove that does exactly the same today. But yes, I also highly recommend women's deodorant.
We won't talk about Veet yet then. But
yeah.
So I think that then, and then I think then at the end of it, there would be the bit where it smelled like a smoky old gentleman's club. But I thought that the best one was definitely that smelling of electrical fish, or panic and fear.
Smell of fear. Yeah. Well, that leads us on to another point, really. I mean, a lot of the marketing and sales stuff I see out there is very fear-driven. Do you think vendors are missing a bit of a trick by spouting fear all the time? Do you think they should be taking a different approach?
You can break fear down, can't you? So break it, FEAR, false evidence appearing real. And I always keep that in the back of my mind when I'm looking at stuff, going, right, what's the evidence for this? And is it real? Because, you could fill a whole room full of shiny boxes and stuff like that, and you don't need it. I mean, I was chatting to this third world central bank, and they were getting sold dark trace. And it's like, you don't need it. You don't know what you got yet, but we're told to do it, because unless you're well informed, they'll put that on the LinkedIn thing. They cash in on the naive. And I know that's a terrible thing to say, and there's some brilliant vendors out there, and I've got some great relationships, but some people just look at a sale and move on, not knowing that you bid for the money, they're accountable for it. As a CISO, it goes wrong, that's your neck on the line, and that's your reputation based on somebody you've had to trust because they've told you they're good for it.
And would you, staying on that point then, it's the big brand names that CISOs feel comfortable with recommending sometimes, for the simple reason that they are well known. And dark trace is probably a bad one with regards to reputation in the industry from some of the comments I've heard, but I'm not going to start moaning about them publicly because I'll get a suit against me. But do you think that that needs to change in any way at all?
Yeah, I do. I mean, that's why I'm really happy to be working with Cyberscale and doing stuff like this, because I've been fortunate to have a range of stuff, like with my university, so Gloucestershire, probably not most known, because otherwise you get the same people doing the same thing, pushing the same all the time. And we've got to give people a chance to get a bit of sort of fresh blood coming through, whether it's a consultancy, whether it's a tool.
Yeah.
And you can't go run by buying IBM. I don't buy into that. You've got there's other stuff out there that are leaner and meaner, and actually you can find somebody you can grow with.
Do you think there's a big problem that a lot of firms of a certain size will only deal with the big four then?
Yeah.
How do we change that?
I think you need people that are going to dig in. I mean, and say for example, I used CyberScale when I was at BAE because they did a really good job. They did some brilliant training. Other people pitched for it, but I didn't want to use it because of the cost. And actually, there's a lack of transparency sometimes because you invest heavily in the relationship, only to find out you turn your back and you've got an intern doing it for you.
Yeah. Absolutely. I've just put the link up there if anyone's interested in checking CyberScale out. Terry's put this link in the chat. This is the link to their new one-day service, which is, I think you'll know more about this than me, but it's aimed at small to medium businesses or micro and small businesses.
Yeah. I'll let have a look at the link.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. So
anyway,
Carlos,
what's Carlos go for? Anyway, what smell do you go for?
Well, Carlos said it smells like oranges. I think I was thinking at it from my level. I'm certainly not in the trenches. So maybe Carlos just likes oranges. For me, I gave a bit of thought to this before we came on because I knew we were going to be chatting about it. And almonds is probably just because yeah. I think it smells exciting, the industry. And that's why you see people like myself wanting to come in as a pen tester a couple of years ago because of the glamorization of it and what you actually think that role is.
Yeah.
I think the real smell is probably something completely different. And at the moment, it's probably quite foisty because it needs a bit of a hangout on the line and a bit of a shakeout would be my comment.
Yeah, like a damp old cellar.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Or as Darren says, smells like teen spirit.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, I think going back to your bit about trying to join the industry. And I gave Thomas a shout out, who was with me there. He was generous with his time, but always experience was hard fought. What worries me is you get people pop up going, I've done CISM, give me a job.
Yeah.
Well, no, you've done a boot camp.
Well, this is again, we see an awful lot of people moaning about, me included, moaning about boot camps that tell you can be a cyber pro in 6 months and earn £100,000 a year. Caveat emptor would be, I suppose, a bit of a statement of mine. Buyers got to be aware and also manage their own expectations a little bit as to how you can become an expert, or could you become an expert in 6 months? And if you haven't got the fundamental knowledge behind you, I think it's an impossible task. That there's a lot of companies out there at the moment preying on, again, back to your point, preying on people, paying on their emotions.
Yeah, and I saw that when I left the Navy, you get some resettlement money, and it's bizarre. You get X amount of money, which is to pay for a course and your terms and your accommodation, and all these courses matched it exactly.
Of course they do. Yeah, it's the same in the US, isn't it?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
And that's wrong. And within the cyberspace, if you're interested, and there was one at your event in Cambridge, reach out to somebody like me or Darren and have a chat, and they can tell you. I'm more than happy to share my journey, what I've learned from. If I can link you into somebody you can have a chat with, if you're interested in, cyber intelligence, cyber operations, I help, they're good, that type of stuff.
Oh, Carlos has changed his mind. He said possibly Grand Marnier. So
not amaretto.
Yeah. I think it's the almonds, isn't it? But yeah. What should we talk about now? Let's think about this.
Do a bit of Apollo, or do you want to talk?
Let's go NASA mission control, because I'm actually a little bit intrigued as to what you're going to say in relation to this.
I've got a lot more one-liners, but I'm not really suitable, mate. But
it's fine. Yeah.
So I read the book about the startup mission control, and it suddenly dawned on me. They went in the Gemini era from nothing all the way through to Apollo and then the shuttle, and they grew with it. And they had to learn all these techniques and processes, and they came out with, I've got it in front of me, Foundations and Mission Operations, and this sits on the back of my wall. So behind my Mac here, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 posters. One says 3 are Moomin. So one says the main thing in life is to know your own mind. Next one is I only want to live in peace and plant potatoes and dream. And then the other one is one can't be too dangerous if they like to eat pancakes. And then next to that is the mission control thing. And they broke it down into professional excellence. So it was discipline, so being able to follow as well as lead. I think that's a really key one. Everyone wants to be a leader. Sometimes people don't want to follow. Or actually learning in a team, follow somebody who works for you. We do have to have this hierarchy of stuff, and that we must master ourselves before we can master our task. Be comfortable. We've talked about this before. Be comfortable in your own skin. And that fear that you're an imposter and other bits and pieces. Competence. There being no substitute for preparation and dedication, and it's got space, but I think you could use cyber here. The cyber will not tolerate the careless or the indifferent.
Yeah.
Confidence, so believing in ourselves, knowing that we must master fear and hesitation before we can succeed. Responsibility, realizing it can't be shifted to others. And I'm meetings I've been in where something's gone wrong and everyone looks around waiting for they go point at you. Toughness. And this, I think, is the key one. Taking a stand when we must, to try again and again, even if it means following a more difficult path. And that comes with the vendor point. If you believe you're buying something that's right, just dig in. They've hired you as a CISO or whatever to dig in over it. Teamwork, respecting and utilising the abilities of others, vigilance, always attentive to the dangers, never accepting success as a substitute for rigour and everything. And then what I really like was the last two, and I've highlighted these. To always be aware that suddenly and unexpected, we may find ourselves in a role where our performance has ultimate consequences. And then the final one, to recognise that the greatest error is not to have tried and failed, but that in the trying, we do not give it our best effort.
Yeah, they're all relevant, aren't they?
Yeah, and I think the last two is, I think the teamwork thing is, the toughness. Sometimes you have to thick skin. These jobs are hard.
Yeah.
People say, basic cyber hygiene. We can't be that basic. People get it wrong. And these are hard, aren't they? And you have to have my heart's on my sleeve, and it's let me down loads of times where people have misplaced my trust. But you have to dust yourself up and then go again. And I think that mission, the foundations, if we want
resilience.
It's resilience. It's personal resilience, and then having buddies. So you ring up and go, I've had a really crap day today. What do you think? Or can you? Because there's nothing worse when you sit in front of your desk and you get the cold finger of fate as you open your email, thinking, "Oh crap, what's in there?"
Well, this is one that comes up with some of the newer to the role CISOs that I speak to. Guys like yourself will have that trusted portfolio of people who you draw on for expertise and guidance. I mean, Darren at Cyberscale is one of them. As a newer CISO, how do you build those relationships, and how should you go about building those relationships?
I think internally, find somebody internally who you can build a relationship with. Head of risk it depends how big the organization. Risk, somebody in the technical area who will give you a bit of balance, and then make sure you've got people that are not intimidated by your position, but happy to challenge you as a critical friend. Someone go, you know what, that is a crap idea.
Yeah, and also, like you said earlier, then having the knowledge and, I suppose, discipline to actually listen and accept that maybe you're not right all the time. I mean, that was one of my biggest failings a few years ago, is that I thought I could do everything better than everyone else. It's a cold, hard day in Norfolk when you realize that isn't true. But equally, it makes life an awful lot easier moving forward.
Yeah. And I mean, sometimes I've jumped in. People say, don't do it. I've whatever. Jumped in feet first, only to go, well, that's a bit wrong. And I think you learn from it and then reach out.
Yeah.
Most people in the sector are nice and want people to be successful, and find someone you can bounce ideas off, I think, and not necessarily don't have to be cyber people to say, does this make sense to you? And if they don't get it, then it's clearly wrong.
Yeah, if you can't explain it to a 5-year-old, you're in the wrong job, someone said to me the other day.
Yeah, and I think that
I haven't met my 5-year-old twins though.
I think it goes back to what's the name now, responsibility, and then that confidence in you believe in yourself as well as others, and you're happy to reach down to get advice and guidance, not being obsessed with, well, I've got C in front of my title, so therefore
100%.
Yeah, that indicates something.
We see too much of that. Let me jump in the chat before I move on to the very exciting topic of Moomins. And just to give everyone a chance, let me just pull up a link to the Moomins if there's anyone who hasn't seen them before. Let's get this up on here. Oh, so while we're doing this, I'm going to drop this in the chat for people just to have a quick look at so they know what we're talking about. I certainly know what Moomins are because they're one of my favorite programs when I was younger. But I want to bring up some of these comments. So I think, I'm not sure who this is because it says LinkedIn user. And this is when we're talking about back to the pen testing and people who've done sort of 6-month qualifications. Gen Z, and we've had this conversation having Gen Z children ourselves, and I don't want to start annoying anyone on this call, but Gen Z may differ. I've seen less than a year experience profiles with cybersecurity or pen tester, and that should be SME, subject matter expert titles as they went through the boot camp. I think we all agree with that. Richard Phillips comment, good to see you, Richard. Cybersecurity should be more of an apprenticeship approach as it is a changing environment. Plus, you can be taught the technical, and it's pointless if you sit monitoring alerts for 2 years. And again, any thoughts on that one, Buck?
I totally agree. I mean, go down the apprenticeship route, go down the degree route, but just get some hands on. I mean, I've seen a lot of people who said, look, can I come do a bit of job shadowing?
Yeah.
And I mean, we did, I think back when we did cyber champions. So each division within the bank, we asked someone to be our cyber champion, but we asked people that are interested in cyber career. So when we're then interviewing for open positions, if they're a cyber champion, they had a better chance than a non-one to show an interest. And then they'd come to team meetings and you engage with them slowly over time to get a different type of talent pipeline. But yeah, totally agree. We need to take a more hands-on approach.
We do, certainly. Next one, back to the smell. After a 24 or 72-hour incident, cyber smells like Monday morning on the tube. BO and alcohol sweats.
Yeah, with a bit of stale pizza.
Bit of stale pizza and, furry teeth. And the last one I'm going to bring up, Carlos, this is a great idea. I'm going to promote the brilliance of Buck and the importance of the InfoSec Live community by reviewing this interview in a LinkedIn post. If you'd like me to mention you in the post, please DM me. And he's put his details in there. So I'd encourage you to do that. That'd be great. Thank you, Carlos. Richard Phillips, he's more than aware of who the Moomins are because he used to have all the books. You're showing us your age there as well, Richard, aren't you?
But no, they're on Sky now, mate. They're on Sky. If you've got Sky TV, they're on the
I don't watch TV. Do you know that?
I think you said about that. I cried. The first one, I sat and watched with my daughter, who's one of my daughters, she's 12. And there was a clear link to Ukraine when Moomin Mum was walking on the beach saying, this is never our land, with stuff we should share. I cried. But then I did cry at Matilda as well in the cinema, and she was mortified.
Did you? When did you watch that?
I went and saw it a few weeks ago. I went away.
I went and saw it Sunday for our. We actually went to see a different film, but when my wife, we went out for my twins' 5th birthday. But when my wife went on her phone on the app, when we got to the cinema, she'd actually picked West Thurrock Cinema, which is nowhere near where we live. So we ended up watching Matilda the musical. And I had a little tear in my eye throughout that, and I really, really enjoyed it. I thought it was brilliant.
I did. I was seeing it on the stage, and I don't really like musicals, but yeah, she's like, "Dad, are you crying?" Yeah, I am.
I cry all the time. I think I said to you when we met before, after my breakdown and everything went wrong a few years ago, I think I spent 12 months spontaneously bursting into tears for no reason. And I think a lot of that is the repressed emotions that I'd kind of been bottling up for a long time, because it wasn't always sad tears. No. Does this make sense? Sometimes it's like a relief.
Yeah,
feels like a relief.
I get it, mate. I totally get it. I mean, there's a few of my beloved Depeche Mode songs that will bring me to tears, not because they're sad, but it will just
trigger memories.
Yeah.
Okay, I see that we've got quite a few questions in here, so I want to encourage people to ask some more because we've got a little bit left. So I'm going to give away one of these hats to the person who asks the best question, and I'm going to bring the next one up, which is a really good question, Alsa. Thank you for asking it. And we definitely haven't got enough time for me to answer this question, so I'm going to just put it on Buck. But here we go. What's your biggest regret?
Oh, what, professionally or work-wise?
I think she just means in general, but Alsa, tell us if you mean anything different.
I think I made having joined the Navy at a very tender age, I made some wrong relationship choices, shall we say, mainly overseas. But I did learn. Someone taught me, always keep your money in your sock. That way you can't get robbed. Even if you ain't got no pants on. And then
this is back to the budgie smugglers again, isn't it?
I think professionally, I don't think you can. I mean, I've made some choices. You think, was that the right thing to do? I think going back to HSBC the second time, that was the right thing at the time.
In your career path, she's just clarified. So
okay,
yeah.
in my career card, my biggest regret, I don't, and it sounds really cheesy, I don't really have any. I feel different at a time, but looking back on it, it all leads the path you go down now. I just think learn to rely on my instinct more. Sometimes when I've tried to ignore my instinct and
Trust your gut.
yeah, trust your gut. I think if you've got a level of emotional intelligence, trust your gut.
Yeah. And does that bring us on to the importance of emotional intelligence in this industry, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, yours tell an extrovert in the cyberspace, they look at your face, not their feet when they're talking to you. But that's the problem, isn't it? We are, and that's fine. But if you're not very good at that type of stuff, surround yourself with someone who's good.
Yeah.
If you don't like doing presentations or board packs, stuff like that, then that's fine. And then get some help, because you don't have to love it. You just have to get to a position where you can do it.
There's a few different sayings with regards to, who you surround yourself with is who you end up becoming to a certain extent. My grandmother was an interesting old lady, and she had a different take on it. Hers was, if you lay down with dogs, you get fleas, which I thought was slightly irrelevant to this conversation. But let's move on to Moomins. Let's talk Moomins. Come on.
I love Moomins. You've seen that article. So I mean, I think Moomins is more of a lifestyle choice and a culture than a set of books. And I think when Yove wrote them, I read them as a kid. You read them as an adult. So like, Comet Moomin Land was about nuclear war, for example. Moomin Midwinter was about her fears for other bits and pieces. So I think they're relevant. And then all the characters got their own little quirks. And you can if you go to moomin.com, you can do a little quiz to see which Moomin character you are. Or you could be many. So deep down inside, I'd like to be Moomin Mama because she's kind, caring. But I think I've got elements of some of the other ones that aren't, that depend what mood you're in.
Yeah.
And I think the Finns have a really good approach to this type of stuff. And I've been to Moomin World.
I see there's a big influence in Finland, full stop. What with the business name, some of the statements on there. What's brought you to that? I'm just while I'm waiting for you to answer that. This is the link to the article that Buck wrote on Moomins on LinkedIn.
So I used to go to Oulu University a lot when I worked for government and stuff like that, and then we went back again. So what I like about Finland, just the practicality of it all. What I struggle with is they don't do small talk. What I like is so if you're Swedish, there's no such thing as bad weather, just inappropriate clothing. If you're Finnish, there's no such thing as bad weather, there's just weak people. And I quite like that mindset. I like the brutality in some respects of the environment, and you can have everything in the world. If you can't keep yourself warm, it's not worth anything. When it's -30, you can have the best car in the world. It won't start.
Yeah,
no matter what it is. And it's just beautiful. And the people are kind, very matter of fact, very unassuming. And I think socially, there's a very small gap between jobs, so people get fair wages. I mean, it comes with higher tax, and they enjoy their. I think it's 6 or 7 before they do proper school. The rest is spent in the forest.
Brilliant. That's pretty much where my childhood was. At the bottom of my mum's garden, there was woods, and I spent all of my younger years in there, building dens, climbing trees, digging holes. It was something that we're very fortunate living in the countryside that my youngest children have experienced that. But I think a lot of youngsters, and again, I'm showing my age now, don't get outside enough and don't get out in nature enough because it's so important for mental health.
I think it is, and there's loads of stuff in there. I can't remember, is it forest breathing or something like that, or forest bathing, where you go out and there's no evidence to prove how it changes, one, the enriched oxygen, but how it changes your view on stuff. Really? And when we're looking at, one of my friends, my best friend, used to work for Ray Mears. And he did some outdoor training for it. So we did 3 outdoor events at the Bank of England as team events. We canoed once from Reading all the way through to, I can't remember, by 7 locks. And I think half the team didn't mind it. A quarter of the team would have killed me because I hated it, and a quarter loved it. We did 2 forest events where we went out in Ashdown Forest, and we did scenarios with smoke grenades and they had to follow this cues around the forest and stuff.
This sounds like a team building day for Cyberscale coming up that I'm hopefully going to get an invite to, Darren, if you're watching.
But I'm thinking. I mean, I was chatting to my friend, and I think there's a potential course there for cyber people. looking at the cyber kill chain, mapping it to the outdoor world, and doing some outdoor stuff just to get people outside and get to think things differently. And I think I remember there's one little challenge where you got like this spider's web.
Yeah.
And
And you have to pass people through.
That's it, yeah.
Yeah, I've
That
done it. Yeah.
I know there was 2 lawyers there. One, every time she touched it, she said, "Yeah, I made a mistake. I got again." One completely denied it, and you could see that replicated in their work, where one was straight down the board, honest, you could trust. The other one would find any excuse and it was never their fault. And I think the outdoor strips away some of that stuff, because it's about, can you feed yourself, can you stay warm, and that's so we did it. So I think we might do an outdoor course on that.
Some of the best times I had as a teenager was staying it's near Llanberis, near Betsy Coed in North Wales. We used to go on a school outward bound trip for a week. And I look back on that now. We're all out in bivvy bags, sleeping on our own at like 13, 14 years old on the side of mountains. You wouldn't be allowed to do that anymore. And I remember, he's not a teacher anymore, so I'm not dropping him in it. But Owen Hunt was the guy who used to organize these trips. We used to hang on the side of his Land Rover at 14 years old while he drove the 15 miles to the pub. Again, don't think the schools will be doing that anymore either. But I learned so much from that experience. One, how to cling onto a Land Rover for dear life without falling off, but also the teamwork part of it as well. We did some crossing bridges or building bridges, and I think any organization will benefit from that. There's some more questions. Let me just jump back in here. Carlos has said, excuse me, more people in cyber need to be talking about forest bathing. I completely agree. Guy Pyle confirmed that, yes, it is forest bathing. And then this one, a little bit of a different angle, but an interesting one to pose to you, Buck. Be interested to talk about how to avoid any conflict of interest being on multiple advisory boards at the same time, which in this industry, you see lots of professionals being on multiple boards. So it's a good question.
I try to stay clear of areas of clash. So Cyberscale is unique compared to the other one, cyber operations. So cyber operations do cyber intelligence, dark web stuff. That's in a silo. And then Cyberscale don't do that type of work. And then university sits above all of it because it's an academic bent. And if I can introduce either of these companies or stuff, then I'm happy to do it. Yeah. And I think just make it really clear, because that way there's no confusion, or you don't end up making an NDA. And I've turned some stuff down where they've said, "Oh, can you do this for it? Can you do that?" But I can't, because I'm just worried about falling foul of it. I think when you've come from organisations where that's key, you don't want to get people to finger point and saying, "Well, you've strayed over the line or you've done us disservice."
It's the avoiding conflicts, isn't it? I think, which is the
key. And this would be clear, really clear. Put them in a silo, keep them really, really clear. And if it feels uncomfortable, then normally it's not the right thing for you, because somewhere in the back of your mind, it's hinting that you're not doing the right thing.
Yeah. Thank you, Buck. Appreciate that. And Alsa, I think so far this next question is probably going to win the best question award from
Do I get a hat?
I can send you a hat. Yeah. You've sent me a ZX81 Spectrum, so you can have 10 hats if you want, Buck, and a hoodie and a polo shirt. So
problem with the hat, I look like I'm like, this way, I don't suit hats, shall we say. I look like I'm a bit special.
I don't believe that for 1 minute.
Oh, no, trust me, mate. Honestly, I was one step away from having mittens with my name on it.
You could wear it backwards and be down with the kids, couldn't you?
I did like your drum and bass on the intro. I like.
Did you like that?
Yeah, I did like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know what? Making those videos is probably one of the biggest bits of fun I have with the work I'm doing at the moment. It's back to, I suppose, doing things that aren't stressful and that you enjoy. So I used to do a lot of drawing many, many years ago, but digital art and videography has kind of taken over from that. And I can get immersed in making videos and creating stuff for like hours at a time without being conscious of time. So it's definitely important to do stuff you enjoy. But if you had the opportunity to initiate a change in the current cybersecurity community, what would it be? Good question.
More transparency and honesty, actually, because I think there's a undercurrent of, so for example, sharing information. 90% of the stuff we do is not competitive, but people put about, "Oh, I can't tell you that because that's confidential, or that's data protection, or that's this, or that's that." Share it, because then we're only as good. So we know for a fact on the underground people are talking and sharing stuff. So we have to do the same. It's an asymmetric threat. They're technically agnostic. They don't care about any of your infrastructures or your barriers to sharing. Share with people. So I'd encourage that. talk, what you see and what's going on, even if it's informal groups, people will know the boundaries.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. There's another one that's actually the same guys asked a question about the advisory boards. Let me just bring that one up for you. What's the typical time commitment for these advisory boards? It varies.
Normally a day. So normally for me, there's one which is my bulk, which is 13 days a month, which I've not listed, and then there's one which is I do a day a month.
Sorry, I can't do two things at once. I'm just typing something in here.
Yeah. So normally, you'd thought a day or two a month, and then there's a hold in case that takes its time. And I suppose you'll need to learn how to be reasonably strict about making sure you keep the boundaries between the different engagements correct, and you're not doing more than you should do or not doing enough.
Yeah, I think that's down to you, though, isn't it, in time management? Yeah. And as long as you haven't got conflicts, it shouldn't be a problem, should it? No. Guys asked another question. Let's bring this one up. Do you think often people sell using fear rather than education and understanding, which devalues the industry? Yeah, I think you might have missed the start, Guy. We had a little bit of a whinge about that. But Buck, do you want to just elaborate on that whinge a bit more?
Yeah, I do. I do. Like we said, fear. Remember, false evidence appearing real. Yeah. And I think they will push it because that's what gets the hit. And we talk in fear, though, don't we? We present in red, amber, and green and stuff like that. Yeah. I think rather than talking about we've got these risks, here's how we mitigate it, and get people to understand you can't get rid of all of it. I know. Have you seen This is Spinal Tap?
Sorry, I have seen that, but I've also just seen the last comment that's come up. Have you read that?
Yeah. I'll answer that one in a minute. But in This is Spinal Tap, there's a bit where they talk about speakers, don't they?
Yeah.
And most speakers got 10, but this goes exercise, got 11. And we tend to do that. Oh, well, most people got that, we've got this. And we've got this thing of benchmarking ourselves. Oh, they've got this text, we're going to have it. So totally agree. It should be based on risk, based on your requirement, and then education and information rather than fear of what happens if you don't do it.
I think that the big problem there is the success the vendors have had with their fear narrative over the last few years, and that's the bit that's going to be difficult to change. I think I'm looking forward to seeing how much fear narrative there is at RSA in a few weeks' time, because last year it was like a fear fest in that room.
Was it? I've never been to RSA. So
lots of free t-shirts. It's the only reason I'm going. But
yeah. Is it? Get some freebie bags.
Yeah, do you know the funny story is I went with one suitcase and had to buy another one to bring all my free t-shirts back last time.
You get those t-shirts, did you? My favourite one, which was when Portcullis used to have a stand in InfoSec, I think, but which they stopped doing for various reasons. And there was one vendor there, and I got the t-shirt and it says, "Protect your back doors." Also, that was quite.
The best one I saw last year in San Fran was "I am not a decision maker," which I thought was stop you getting accosted every 5 minutes. But I think it actually made people think they were probably a decision maker, so it didn't really.
I didn't get sex trafficked, no, but there is interesting. There's a drive to try and change it. At one point, the Gambian government was talking about banning or trying to work out how could they ban white middle-aged women from traveling to Gambia for that reason, because they're fed up of court cases where he said he loved me or she said he loved me and lose all their money.
Again, it's caveat emptor, isn't it?
Yeah.
Buyer beware.
Yeah, it is.
If it looks too good to be true, it probably is too good.
Yeah, exactly.
And from what you said about all those people in budgie smugglers, I think I'd probably agree. We've got 2 minutes left. Any words of insight for people who are looking to break into the industry? There's lots of people out there who say they want to be in cybersecurity. Not all of them actually have that passion. So for me, the biggest prerequisite is having that passion, that love of it. What about for you? What are the key points that people will need to make a success in this industry?
I think it goes back to the, goes back to those mission qualities: discipline, confidence, responsibility, toughness, teamwork.
Yeah.
I think if you can encapsulate them, we've trained people. I've taken people that had no cyber background and we've put them through a process, and they're now in cyber roles because they had the right mental approach to it. They were keen to engage, and enthusiasm. I'll tell you what, enthusiasm will get you so far.
It will.
If you don't like doing it, don't find something else to do. Don't do it.
Yeah. That leaves me actually with one more question, which I haven't asked you already. And we hear a lot in the industry about a perceived skills gap. Me personally, I think the skills gap is at the leadership end more than the other end. What's your opinion on the perceived skills gap in the
Yeah, it's
industry?
too many managers, not enough leaders, and there's different skill set, and you need for different things. My longevity as a manager is pretty short normally. I tend to get, I can get disruptive, and I'm well aware of that. And you know, you can get quirky, but to a point, and you get away with being quirky when they need you as a leader. When they need more management type stuff, then the clock's ticking and going into the Bank of England black nail varnish on will only get you so far.
Is this where we say that there's a clear distinction between leadership and management? Though?
Yeah. 100%. And then there's also the other thing that really gets on my chump is there's a permafrost layer of middle managers that are resistant to everything.
Yes.
The answer is no. What was the question?
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And that just winds me up, because it's not about that. So I think there is a difference, and we need more leaders, more people with enthusiasm, and more people willing to take calculated risks to improve the overall environment and what we all work in, and as a profession.
Are you okay with me dropping your LinkedIn link in the chat here for people to connect with you? Is that okay?
Yeah. Because okay. I'm new. I'm now 2 weeks into LinkedIn. 2 weeks from being a LinkedIn virgin for years. I'm now 2 weeks into it.
I'm now, as of last week, 2 years in to my LinkedIn journey, and it's been a bit like throwing stuff at a wall and seeing how much sticks and what works. But I think that the one bit of advice I was given was be yourself and add value. And I think you doing that in itself should be an absolute winner. And I'm sure you're already up to several connections on there, aren't you, Buck?
I won't mention fish with tits, though.
No, or chocolate teapots, or any other analogies that work like that.
Oh, what was the other one? I quite like. He was so unlucky he could fall in a bucket full of tits and still come up sucking his thumb.
Brilliant. I love it. Look, better announce the winner for the question competition. Alsa, I'm going to give it to you, because I think that the question about what the industry needs is a really, really good one. So send me a DM with your address and I'll ping you an InfoSec Live hat in. Buck, it's been absolutely insightful and entertaining, as I knew it would be. Any final words from you on, are you looking for any work? Are you looking for any opportunities? How can the community help you?
What my sweet spot would most probably be board advisory stuff, especially if there's stuff with the regulation change in the US that I can do. Mentoring, which I'm quite keen on doing as well. So it's board level advisory, supporting CISOs, that type of stuff. I think within regulated industry where I've got I think, and if you've got something quirky different, give me a shout and I'll see what I can do.
I really appreciate it. I've got another link.
Not going up and down the beach in Gambia with my bits hanging out.
No, well, we've all got this image of you and your budgie smugglers now that I can't get rid of. So I'll just drop this in. This is a link to Cyberscale, who are a firm local to myself, also the sponsors for our very first CISO Experience in-person event in Cambridge last month, which Buck very kindly attended and gave a very insightful talk to. Highly recommend you check them out and reach out to both Darren and Graham Duckworth on LinkedIn, who work for them. From me, anyone who's coming to Florida to Tampa Bay event on Thursday, very, very excited. We are now a sellout. We have 75 people registered to come to this event. So I'm very, very excited to be meeting some of the industry's leadership from Tampa Bay. And for anyone who's going to B-Sides Tampa in Florida on Saturday, I hope to see you there too. So Buck, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. We must catch up when you're next back up in this neck of the woods.
Yes, mate. Yeah.
Do let me know and we'll have a little bit of a catch up. But everyone, thank you very, very much for tuning in. Look forward to seeing you all soon.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thanks, guys.